I think they're calling me a Renaissance man because I dress funny. I own Buck's Restaurant in Woodside. Has anybody ever been there? That's such a lovely sound. You know, Buck's has been there 20 years since last week was 20-year anniversary, and I meet the world's most amazing characters. Last week, I met the ambassador from Botswana to Washington. I've met the president of France, the head of Israel, Iceland, Denmark, a lot of Scandinavians. And, you know, there's so many people that come to Buck's from all over the world, really compelling characters. Famous actors and great people in business and little babies and old people. But there's one person that never came in. And in fact, this has been bugging me for 30 years. Bugging me kind of a lot. So I want to tell you, today I'm going to apologize to Steve Jobs because we ended up not getting along. I used to be pretty close to Steve. We were good friends. Let me tell you how it worked out. I used to be a builder. I used to remodel houses. In fact, I was handy in college. I did fix-it work. And so after college, I somehow ended up in Palo Alto, and I sent a flyer out, and this guy answered it and said he needed a doorknob fixed. And I spent 3 years on his house, and I basically learned my whole trade as a carpenter and a contractor on this guy's one house through trial and error. So my second job ever was for Steve Jobs. It was a terrible experience, let me tell you. He was 24 years old, and I was a bit older. And when I first met him, I went to his house in Los Gatos. It was a rather unremarkable house in the hills, and it was completely empty. He had a girlfriend, a mattress on the floor, and a computer, and that was pretty much it. Kind of all you need, though, really, when you think about it. He showed me the computer. We sat there the first time, and he said, you can have a column here and a row, and you get an answer. And I thought, big deal. I said, so how many employees do you have? He said, well, about 250. And I thought, that's a big deal. I only had one employee. So started a year of error, mostly, and trial and error, and him trying to articulate this level of quality that I was completely unable to deliver. I was, by his standards and even by mine now, an incompetent contractor. I didn't really understand. I didn't see deeply into the job, and he didn't know exactly what he wanted, but he didn't want that. That was for sure. But we used to go out to dinner a lot. He came up to the house. We went for hikes. I mean, he was 24, and he was under a lot of pressure, both with the woman he was living with and with going public and with then being worth $250 million, and it was always raining down on him. And then he'd come home, and I'd say, look at this. He'd go, I hate that. That's terrible. Terrible? It is? Really? I mean, I remember he took me into the basement once and said, look, there's this little phone panel, little single wire across a piece of plywood with staples. He said, can't you make this like a straight wire and uniformly measure the staples and you know, make it look good? I said, Steve, it's just a panel in the basement. It doesn't matter. You know, I'm arguing with Steve Jobs about quality. I lost every one of those arguments. But there were the human times too. I mean, I was standing on the front porch with him one day, and his girlfriend came up and she said, John Lennon had just been killed. John Lennon was huge to us. He was so important to us. You might have heard of him. He used to be with the Beatles. And then he and his girlfriend and I had a hug, and Steve burst into tears. You know, it was a real raw human moment. There was a lot of other raw energy there, mostly yelling. You know, there's a famous picture of Steve sitting on the floor of his living room because he was a real simple guy and didn't need a lot of furniture. Well, I went couch shopping with Steve Jobs. And I thought, Steve, just buy them all. I went car shopping with Steve. He couldn't quite pick it. He came home in the old car, and I thought for many years it was just indecision and persnicketyness, but really it was like, this world wasn't quite good enough for him, so he had to go create a whole new world that was good enough. And you know, after a year of back and forth, finally, I installed this door lock, this doorknob, and it rattled a little bit. And it was to specification. The designer said, use this one. But he came up and said, this bugs me. It rattles. Can you imagine giving Steve Jobs his main entry doorknob that rattled and him not like it? And then telling him, live with it, Steve. Use another door. It doesn't matter. Well, you know, today I'd go, well, I wouldn't even put it in. But if I had, I would totally agree. It was junk. And then I learned that just because people are really, famous designers and Porsche car company or whatever, that doesn't mean they're doing it all right. So he decided to reinvent it. One of his great tricks was to take a piece of electronics and throw it in a bucket of water, and if any air came up, he'd say, there's room in there, make it smaller. So here's why I want to say I'm sorry to Steve, because he was one of the world's great teachers. He had so much to teach me, and I could not hear him. He would yell right in my ear, do better than you think you can. But Steve, I'm doing the best I can. He said, I don't want the best you can do. I don't want the best you can even imagine. I want the best there is. That's nuts. Who can do that? Well, actually, I could have done a lot better if I could only have heard him. And now I really do hear him after all that's passed. And so I want to say, Steve, I'm really sorry. If I'd only heard you then, I would have been a better craftsman, a better technician. I might have even been a better person. Although I wouldn't have wanted to be you, Steve. I'm glad that I'm me, but I wish I'd heard that one message, that I could do better than I thought I could do. And today, I can do better on every day than I think I can do, and I know I'm going to do it tomorrow. So, sorry, Steve. Thanks.